Who were you before you lost your wild self?
That's what we're helping you explore on the Tend Her Wild podcast.
Through questions and tools around how best to listen to your inner voice,
rewild ourselves, and live the most authentic life where we thrive instead of survive.
I'm Betsy.
And I'm Kate.
And we're so glad you've joined us for this episode.
Hello, Tend Her Wild podcast listeners. Today we have a guest with us on Zoom that we are thrilled to have. She is coming to us from the Dominican Republic. It is Nicole Johnston. And I want to share a little bit about Nicole. She's a passionate executive and leadership coach and the author of Taboo Topics, Things Women Should Talk About But Don't. She previously held senior sales and marketing roles at Procter & Gamble, Hershey Foods, and Kimberly-Clark, leading billion-dollar businesses to success. Nicole transitioned from corporate to coaching, founding Innate Power to support women in overcoming obstacles and achieving their potential. Welcome, Nicole.
Thank you so much. I'm excited to be here.
We had the opportunity to hear Nicole speak at a business event for women through the Tippie School at the University of Iowa. And we both knew, we're like, oh, we want to talk to her on this podcast. So we're excited to talk about taboo topics today. But Nicole, we always start by asking women and the people we interview about their first 10 years. We have found it's a pinnacle time for people, and it definitely shapes where you go and who you become. And we know you're an Iowa girl, similar to Kate and I, and Iowa girls unite here. So we would love to hear about how you grew up in those first 10 years and anything that sort of foreshadows what you ended up doing with your career and your life.
Yeah. So when I was through 10 years old, I lived outside of Iowa City first. So call out to good old Wellman, part of Mid Prairie School District. And I grew up there until my dad got a different teaching and coaching job. And so I lived in Des Moines, like literally for 3 months until my mom got her teaching job, because both my parents are teachers. And then I ended up being raised in Newton, Iowa until that point. And what I would say is the first 10 years of my life, there was a few things that were very important. First of all, with both your parents being teachers, obviously education, and really making sure that I was just learning whatever I could. And that turned me into an omnivorous reader, because I will read everything from the latest business philosophy to a vampire romance. I don't care. I will read it. I love it all. And secondly is, with my dad being a coach, was a very high emphasis on sport. And I started playing sport year round when I was 7. And so it became a really big part of my life. And it gave me a lot of the resilience and willingness to try and to go back. And we might have lost, but we might have missed the shot, and really building those skills. And then the third thing I would say is, you wouldn't know by looking at me, but I'm deaf in one ear. And so I had to spend a lot of my time as a kid actually at the Wendell Johnson Speech and Hearing Clinic when I was learning how to speak, because I spoke like I was deaf when I was a little kid. And so my mom actually did her student teaching there, ironically. And but it was a lot about becoming comfortable in saying, hey, I have to sit here. I have to be here. I have to have this in order to participate. Now, if the same thing happened today, they would have slapped a hearing aid on that ear and it would have been from go. They would have done a totally different approach. But back then that didn't happen. And so because of that, I really had to learn to advocate for myself just to be able to participate. And to this day, it looks like left-handed people and I fight at dinner because they want to sit where I am. And they say I'm left-handed and I say I'm right-eared. And they're like, that wins. I'm like, yes. And so, but that advocacy matters. And so those were 3 of the big things that I learned up until I was 10.
Wow. I love so many things about that. One is, I think we grew up about 20 miles from each other in small town Iowa. But also, I was just at the National High School Coaches Association yesterday conference, and the coaches, we were talking about 94% of women who go on to be CEOs and executives played sports. And
Yeah.
I think about what I know about your career, and that being able both things to be true, as an advocate for your own self and being able to step into and say what you need
Yeah.
very young, and then also having a dad as a coach in the background and playing sports that really elevates your ability to be resilient and take risks and step into rooms to lead.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you know the second part of that statistic. 94% played sports, and 50% of them played Division One sports.
I didn't.
Yeah. And
Wow.
so continuing sports through will absolutely help you accelerate your career, because the skills you learn aren't just how to hit a drop shot, how to make a jump shot, those kinds of things. It's the teamwork, coming back, resiliency, being coachable. All of those things can really help accelerate your career.
Mm.
And
Wow.
so I was listening to Kylie Kelsey, Jason Kelsey's wife, who has her I'm Not Gonna Lie podcast. And one of the things she says on that all the time is get your girls to try out. Even if they don't make it, it will help them fall in love with sport. They will be much more willing to be around sport, because too often it's binary of I didn't make it, what do I do? I can't do it, I'm a failure. And instead, getting that experience and exposure really matters. And I loved it when Kylie was talking about that, because I was like, yes, we need more of
Yes,
that.
we do.
Mm.
And allowing girls to try different things, try out for different things so that
Yeah.
when we grew up, Betsy too, probably, like, we had the ability to go out for lots of different sports and try things. Now we kind of
Yeah.
pigeonhole kids very young, and that's your sport. And I sometimes worry that we're not
Yeah.
allowing, especially girls, to try other things that they may be very excited or
Yeah.
talented about, and we don't give them that opportunity.
For those of you who are from Iowa, you don't recognize the benefit you have, because Iowa is the only state that has 4 seasons for sports in the US.
Okay.
No other state has summer sports. So when you were talking about trying different things in Iowa, you are uniquely able to do that because you have 4 chances. So sorry. Anyway,
I had no idea that Iowa was the only state that
Yeah.
allows summer sports. Interesting.
and
Okay.
I mean, that was the data I had as of 5 years ago. Obviously, something could have changed, but it's fairly unique.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fascinating.
It's true.
Okay, so you were a Division One athlete, and
Mhm.
then post college, did you go right into the business sector and leadership? I mean, sort of take us on the journey of your career, because you've done so much. Like, just fill us in on what that looked like.
I actually started working for Procter& and Gamble when I was in college. I got internships in college, and through the help actually of there was a great guy at the women's athletic department who helped do placement of athletes, and so he helped me get my interview for Procter& and Gamble for an internship. In fact, I'd just come home from track practice, and he's like, "Hey, P&G wants to interview." I'm like, "Great, when?" He's like, "Now," and I'm going, I need time. He's like, no, you need to go now. So I literally did my interviews, and I feel so bad for the people who had to sit next to me, because I literally just come from practice. But I started, and a lot of people think that internships are one way, meaning that the company decides that they like you. But it's so important to also recognize that you get to decide, do you like the environment? Do you like the people you work with? Do you like that type of job? It should be a two-way decision making. And a lot of times people don't think of that. So I started internships after my sophomore and junior year, and then I started full time my senior year. So it was really lovely to go into my senior year already having a job offer signed.
Wow.
So it made my senior year a little less stressful than for some. And then when I started working for P&G, I worked after doing my internships in Minneapolis. I moved down to Phoenix, and I've actually moved 19 times since I graduated from college. I do not recommend that. It's not
Wow.
delightful, but it helped set me up to be able to do some of the things in my career. And anytime you start, you're obviously going to start on the rounding error side of things. So if you learn and you mess up, it's not going to hurt anything massive, right? And so I started doing progressively larger roles, bigger responsibility, more important customers, had more people report to me, and just, started doing roles that were moving me up until my last couple of roles with Procter& and Gamble. I actually lived in Switzerland. And so I was doing global roles for them there. And it was fascinating learning, shifting from calling on customers externally to having to support internal customers, to dealing with people and learning how to lead people. And because one of the things I firmly believe in is the first time you lead people, you're probably going to be a flaming idiot because you don't know how to do it and it's not taught. And so with
Right.
that, you do what you think you would want, but 99 times out of 100, that's not what the other person would want. And so you have to develop those skills. And that to me was the most important thing. And like when I moved to Switzerland, how I led people in the US was totally irrelevant to how I needed to lead people in Switzerland because now I had a whole bunch of cultural concerns that came in as well. And so to me, the growth has always been not only on the business, but on the skills, the interactions, the people, all of that matters. And there was just mind-blowing moments where I was like, oh wow, that never would have thought of that. Okay, because it was just the difference in approach and learning. And to me, that's the really cool thing about growing in your career is having those opportunities.
Well, and it can't help but think after reading your book that so much you were basically writing this book as you went. Feels like a lot of the nuggets you learned along the way and the examples and really felt like a collection of your experience personally that highlighted these taboo topics for women. So at some point, you decided to leave to kind of step off the corporate ladder, so to speak. Tell us about that decision, how you made it, and what made you finally take that leap.
In my last role in corporate, I was just not happy. And my husband knew it. Everybody around me knew it. I was frankly probably not the best person to be around at that point. And my husband kept saying, you can quit. And I was like, whatever. And, we just kept having those kinds of discussions. And I remember just sitting in meetings and I felt like I was having the same conversation over and over and over again, and change wasn't happening. And it wasn't the fun conversations, it was the conversations of, you said you were going to take 1,000 pallets, you took 912. Why didn't you take 1,000? Because we made 1,000. And it's just those kinds of conversations that are just not fun for anyone, but I kept having the same ones. Whereas the conversations I loved of were, hey, you want to go have this experience? All right, let's create a project to get you there. Or you want to grow up and be this? All right, let me get you over. I love doing that part of it, but I was so weighed down. And when you are the head sales officer and you don't like sales, not the best thing. And so I was driving to work one day after I'd had another one of those conversations with my husband of, you can quit. And so I still remember so clearly because I was driving in the right hand lane going to work. And in the center lane in front of me is a semi. And he's a couple, 3, 4 car lengths ahead of me. And I see a car cut the semi off. The semi has to slam on its brakes not to hit the car in rush hour traffic. And the trailer starts fishtailing and it fishtails over into our lane. The 4 cars in front of me accordion crashed and I jerked my wheels, slammed on the brakes, and literally stopped this far away from the car in front of me. And all around me, I hear screeching metal and screaming brakes and tires skidding, and there's smoke. And I'm just sitting in my car going, don't hit me, don't hit me, don't hit me, don't hit me, because I don't know what's going on around me. And so then after a couple minutes, I realized, okay, I'm not going to get hit. I'm okay. And the adrenaline just kind of goes out of my body. And I remember sitting in my car thinking, man, if I hadn't been so fast on the brake, I wouldn't have to go to work.
Mm.
Whew.
So I was literally choosing bodily harm
Yeah.
over
Yeah.
my job.
Yeah.
Wow.
That was your wake up.
Exactly. And at that moment, I was like, oh, I should pay attention to that thought.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
And
Oh.
so then I built my plan out of how I was going to leave corporate and what I was going to do. And I wanted to hold on to what I loved, which was helping people thrive. And I have just seen so many women throughout my career who were disadvantaged or overlooked or shoved into a box that didn't need to be. Like when I moved to Geneva, I was told you're probably going to have to fire your whole team. And I was like, well, that's aggressive. Okay. But I got there and I realized not at all. I had phenomenal people. They just needed some feeding and watering. And as
Mm.
soon as I gave them the love, they all shone. And in fact, I ended up promoting them all. But it was just so easy throughout my career for people to take women and go, no. And so between my love of developing people and seeing what had happened to women, I'm like, this is what I need to go do. And so that's why I left and started Innate Power, and it was to help women thrive.
Mm. And tell us about the writing of this book, Taboo Topics, because oh my goodness. I mean, I'm not in the business sector, Kate has been, but so much of what you wrote about, I still resonated with. What was the impetus behind writing it? I mean, clearly you've had all these life experiences and you have this deep desire to be of service to others, but what really was the fire underneath you that said, okay, I'm going to put these in words?
There was a few things. First of all, is you always want me on your trivia team because I can hold a vast repast of very interesting knowledge. And I love sharing it with people. And sometimes they love that share, sometimes not as much, but I love to share it with people. I've had a lot of people tell me I actually should write a book. And I wanted to get the experiences out there so that when women read the book, they can, first of all, say, oh, it's not just me. Secondly, that they can be like, oh, there's a way to address it. And third, that I gave them the way to address it. Because one of the things that drives me nuts about business books is I'll read a business book and I'll be like, oh my gosh, that's a big problem. And there's absolutely no solution to it in the book. So
Yeah.
then I have to go find another book to solve that book. And it's just this ongoing thing. Whereas in this, I wanted to make it very approachable with easy to take next steps with very clear, and here's a way to deal with it. Because I didn't want people to have to find another book to solve my book. And
Right.
so
Love
that's
that.
why I just started writing it.
Well, as you've been out talking with women about the book, what taboo topic tends to resonate the most with women? And why do you think that is?
I think two that rise to the top are perfectionism and giving ourselves permission.
Mm.
Because girls are socialized to be perfect. You get the gold star. Oh, we're going to set him next to you because you're so good. Everything is socialized for perfection. So when it starts to be a little bit more difficult, where it's not the obvious choice, where the STEM topics come in, because girls are not taught resilience, they're taught perfection, they
Mm.
start doubting their abilities, really getting down on themselves, saying, oh, I suck. And instead of saying, oh, I don't know how to do this, let me try again, which is something I got from sports, but they don't have that ability because boys are taught to try again, girls are taught to be perfect. And so
God,
when you
so
lay
true.
that out for women, yeah, when you lay it out, a lot of women are like, hey, wait a second.
Right.
Yes.
I think you write about perfectionism as a warm, cozy blanket that women are kind of covered with because
Yeah.
it becomes so much part of our
Identity, really.
identity
Yeah.
that we almost get it holds us back, obviously,
Mhm.
as you talk about in the book, because it's all we know. And if we can't be perfect, then we don't take the risk. We don't, move
And
on.
it's
Yeah.
safe. That
It's
that
safe.
Yeah.
safe, it makes us feel safe. If I just keep doing the things that I know I'm good at, then I'll be able to stay perfect and safe versus the resilience allows us to take a bunch of risks and have new experiences.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a stat from Sheryl Sandberg's book Lean In that talks about how women will apply for jobs when they have 90% of the qualifications. And my joke on that is men will apply for the job if they can read the title. And so,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and it's largely true. They want to be so sure that they can do the job. They won't apply to it until they've already got all the criteria to do the job, which is not the point of a job. The point of a job is to learn and
Yeah.
grow. But we don't allow ourselves that, but what if I mess up? What if I don't get it right the first time? Women are socialized to fear that instead of recognizing good enough is fine.
Mhm.
And so that's part one. The other part to your question is around giving ourselves permission because we don't give ourselves permission to not be perfect. We don't give ourselves permission to push back. We don't give ourselves permission to call things out.
Yeah.
We don't give ourselves permission to say, hey, that's not okay, because that means you're not perfect.
Yeah.
Right.
How do you think you found the courage to start to do that? I mean, because I agree. Kate and I've had so many. In fact, we just did a whole episode on perfectionism,
Mhm.
and we both acknowledge we were trained. We got the gold stars. We followed the rules. We did all the education. And so it's as if you're still living under that cloud of perfectionism. And it has served us well in many ways because you achieve and and we see the downsides of it. So I'm curious for you, how did you begin to bust out and speak up and push back in these systems that are geared towards men? Let's be
Mhm.
honest here. Where did you find the courage to start to do that?
Well, when we talked about what happened when you were 0 to 10, my mom always told me, question authority, but raise your hand first. And so that
Wow.
is, yep. So because she knew that there was going to be battles because my teachers either loved me or hated me. And the smart ones figured out I would grade all their papers and help them out with everything. And the ones who weren't so smart, we had some battles. But my mom always told me, raise your hand first. You can ask anything you want, just raise your hand first. And so she gave me permission from a very young age to disrupt. And so I had taken that forward to I if I see someone being mistreated, if I see something that's not right, I have no fear in calling it out because it's not right. And if that was done to me or someone I loved, I wouldn't stand for it. And so it was that very simple question authority, but raise your hand first that my mom taught me when before I went to kindergarten that I've held my entire life.
Snaps
Mhm.
to mom
I
for that one.
know.
Dang. It's
Love that,
amazing.
mom.
Yeah.
It does show you how I think that's also an example, which we talked about, of a mother seeing the gifts of her child and wanting them to be her to you to flourish in those and be able to use your gifts and helping you see how to put those forward in a maybe a respectful way or to step into that but not hiding your light either, right? She so I love that so much.
So do you feel like, Nicole, that, on this podcast, we talk about rewilding, and Kate and I found that it happens a lot in midlife where women do start to find their voice, or they do say, I'm sick of this perfectionism, but
Mhm.
would you say maybe you, because of your mom's early message to you about speak up, raise your hand, that you were able to maybe rewild, like stay in your own truth and your own essence earlier? Or I'm curious about that because we see it happens a lot at midlife.
Mhm.
When
Yeah.
do you think you finally came into your real strength, power, and voice?
I would say that I was probably a little bit louder than many women for a long time. But I still, from societal pressures, would still be nice, be the good girl, those kinds of things until I had that, what was it, Yosemite Sam? I can take so much, I can't take no more. I had that moment when I was in my early 30s of I am putting on a persona to go to work because I've been told that this persona will be successful. And I realized how frankly exhausted I
Mm.
was with that persona. And then I realized if I was going to keep putting that persona on, I was going to burn out and not succeed because that persona wasn't me.
Mm. I resonate with that so much. I know you do too. There's a certain amount of energy we have to expend to do that that
Mhm.
leads to exhaustion and also prevents us from doing other things or taking the risks because our energy is so wrapped up in performance and being what we think we need to be, and it is exhausting.
That is one of the things all my coaching clients, I go through their calendar with them because I ask them, where do you spend your energy? And they don't recognize how much of their time is spent and their energy is spent not helping them. I mean, I'm not talking about obviously you want to help your kids lunches and that kind of, sure, absolutely. I'm not talking about that stuff, but like, are you the only one doing housework? Are you the
Yeah.
only one taking care of kids'
Mm,
needs? Are you the only one doing the mental labor in the family? Are you the one buying all the presents for your spouse's family? Or, all of that kind of stuff. And then at work, Are you doing all the non-promotable work? Are you planning the meetings, ordering the lunches, taking the notes? All of that kind of stuff just zaps your energy and your time. And in a work setting, it certainly won't get you ahead. In fact, it entrenches you further in the role you're in. And at home, you don't recognize how uneven the division of labor is until you step back and actually start counting it.
Yeah.
Yes.
You talk a lot about that emotional labor in your book and how
Mhm.
women feel it, but they don't. It's starting to be talked about more, which is the whole
Yeah.
point of this taboo topics. We got to talk about it and define it and say, yeah, me too. I feel that. That's what that is. But how and as women have taken on leadership roles, I think, and I saw this during COVID as a CEO, and I left my role after COVID, but the women were taking on the mental they were being asked to help people through the mental anguish of that period. And, when they were having challenges, women were stepping in at home to hold up at home, helping homeschool, and then being the ones at work who were helping people emotionally through that time. So can you talk a little bit more about emotional labor and how you talk about it in the book and why has it been so taboo? Because it's probably existed
Yeah.
forever.
Yeah. So saw someone speaking the other day, and they said that the feminist revolution has not, the problem is not that women are independent. The problem is that men aren't.
Ooh.
Ooh, that's a mic drop.
Yes.
Wow.
So you want to work all
Wow.
day, you want to come home and make your dinner, you want to do all that? Sure, that's what women do. The problem is men aren't. They can't, they don't. And they're
Right.
still expecting you to do all the labor. And so
Mm.
when I talk about emotional labor in the book, I talk about from a professional perspective. I gave the example of there's a woman who was the COO, or the chief operating officer, second in command at Procter and Gamble. We're talking 100 million or $100 billion company, second in command. And she came to speak to the women's group. And I still remember this so clearly because I was in my late 20s, maybe at the time. And she talked about how she does not spend an ounce of her energy on or time if she doesn't add value. Now, I recognize that the COO of a Fortune 50 company has a little bit more disposable income than most of us, but you'll get the point. And she talked about how she doesn't garden. She does not have a green thumb. She does not enjoy it. She pays to have someone do her yard. She says, I can add absolutely no value to having a toilet cleaned. She pays someone to do that. But when it's time to take her kids to the doctor, she absolutely can add value to that. So she makes sure that she has time and energy to do it.
Mm.
And so she said, every year I go through my life and I check where I'm spending my time and energy. And is it something I'm good at, I enjoy, I want to do? And if not, I figure out a different way to get it done. Now, again, obviously more disposable income versus not. But I talk about in the book the amount of times I've asked women to ask their husband about, hey, why don't you do laundry this week? And then watch them go, but you do that. But that's and then start having the conversations about, hey, this is too much. I need you to take this over. And taking something over is not taking the kid to softball. Taking something over is registering for the league, paying for the league, communicating with the coach, understanding the practice schedule, making sure your kid has a ball, a glove, the da 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 da, getting them there every week, getting them to the games every week, knowing when it's your week to bring treats, planning the treats and getting them. It is the whole arc. It is not, well, I dropped him off.
Right.
No.
Yeah. And that's
And
the mental load, right? Of all the things
yeah,
that go into that we
yeah,
hold in our brain.
Yeah. And that we're just expected to, as I'm listening to this and reflecting on my own life of being the main emotional and mental sort of leader of the family, that I didn't actually know there was a different option. Like,
yeah,
no one told me that there was a different way to do it. And so I think that, again, the point of this book and these conversations are, yeah, we can advocate for a different way. We instead of getting sick and tired and exhausted and overwhelmed and burned out, which is so typical in women. As a
so
mind
common.
body
Mhm.
psychologist, the amount of like autoimmune disorders and physical health conditions for people, for women in particular, is outrageous. So, yeah, something has to shift. So I love that we're talking about these taboo topics.
Yeah.
There's a quote I have in my book that I gotta love RBG, but Ruth Bader
Ah,
Ginsburg,
Hmm.
she said when her children's school kept calling her, she said, the child has two parents, alternate calls.
Love that.
mm,
I
That.
love that.
yeah,
Yes. And it really just comes down to asking for what we need
Yes.
and
And
pointing it out to people
mhm,
like that, whoever that, probably at the time a secretary was like, oh, wow, I
yeah,
guess that's true, right? Like
yeah,
so by even just speaking your truth, you're spreading that message, I guess is what I would say. And it's like a chain reaction to kind of awake women to this.
yeah,
I, I go back to
exactly.
Nicole's mom. Raise your hand.
Yes.
Ask for what you need. Raise your hand.
Yes.
Yeah.
So in parts of the book, you talk a lot about women's reproductive health. You talk about
Mhm.
pregnancy, menopause, all we deal with so much. I heard recently all these things women deal with and men deal with puberty, period. So I just
That's
want to
it.
point that out. um, but what I really took away from that discussion is we have to honor one another's choices
Yeah.
in this. We have to share information with one another and be in community, but we also need to honor each other's choices. And I feel like at this moment in time, there's this kind of tug of war with women about what is feminism dead? Do we, I'm on this side or that side, and it's keeping us divided once again, which takes away our collective power. So, what would you say to how do we how do we rally each other to honor one another's choices and see it as a continuum, or there are different ways to do things, and the judgment is
Yeah.
really preventing us from all having the equality we deserve.
Women are shamed for literally everything.
Mm,
How they breathe, how they look, how they walk, how they talk, what they said, what they didn't say, how they acted, how they didn't act. It does not matter what you do, women are shamed. Imagine if instead you celebrate it. Look at her, she did that. Instead of judging, you celebrate. Look at her, she had 6 kids. That's awesome. Look at her. She is the best aunt ever because she doesn't have kids. Amazing. Look at her. She has 1 kid, and oh my God, that kid is the best thing in her world. Awesome. Instead of judging, celebrate.
Mm.
And the next time, because we all judge, anyone who says they don't is lying. The next time you go to judge someone, what if you stop yourself and say, instead, how would I celebrate that?
Wow.
yeah. That's a powerful thing to
Reframe.
let land.
Hmm.
And the point of that we all judge. I think that's so key for us to acknowledge and honor that that is also something as women that we've been conditioned and trained to do
Hmm.
because there's
Mhm.
not enough opportunities for all of us. So we're always looking at who's better and who's getting more accolades, and so it's baked into us. And so even if we perceive ourselves as non-judgmental, it's actually we still are,
Hmm.
and to be able to catch ourselves and then say, "Oh, wait, can I celebrate her
Yeah.
choices and how she's choosing to live?"
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
that
Because
would change a lot for us, Nicole, if we
it
all learned
would.
to do that.
And it
Yes.
would also, it also changes this idea of that women are great leaders.
Mhm.
Women should be leading in every facet of our society. And
Yes.
I think women, in some ways, are the ones, I mean, I expect it from men. It's harder for me to accept that women are expecting perfection from women in leadership that they don't expect from the men in leadership. And so once women stop doing that, I feel like that's when the tide starts to turn. And I think it's
Yes.
happening more, but it's boy, it feels like years of trying to get there.
Yeah. I personally have the habit of if I see any woman out, I want to figure out a way to compliment them. And whether it's, oh my gosh, that fuchsia shirt is fabulous on you, because we spend our whole lives being judged and looked at wrong. I would rather find something great about a person and tell them.
Mm. Lift
And
up one another. Yeah.
how little effort that takes just to in that smile you get is so phenomenal. So that's what I try to do anyway.
Yeah. And
I
that's
love
what
that.
we do have control over that, right? We have control how we walk through the world and lift each other up.
Okay, Nicole, I want to ask you about chapter 20, which is sexism. And you say that it makes you feel crazy for wanting equality.
Mhm.
And I think that it's really powerful. And I would love to dig into this because I think we're all around the same generation. And there seems to be a younger generation that's maybe moving, not all of them, but towards more moving back to more of the traditional wife role. And can you just help us wrap our head around sexism? I know it's a big topic, but I found this especially fascinating, your perspectives on this.
I think this is something that most women internalize and don't even recognize it's happening to them until something is so egregious that they know that someone can't say, no, 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 you misinterpreted it. And because of that, there are so many micro cuts that happen throughout our lives. I gave the example in the book of when I had moved back to Cincinnati one time. I had gone to my boss and said, hey, I'm going to be working from home this afternoon because I need to get my Wi Fi connected. And literally out of his mouth was, but can't your wife? I'm like, yeah, God, it must be amazing to have a wife at home who could do that for you.
Whoa.
And in that moment, it made me realize through all of this guy's moves, through everything he's ever done in his career, literally the only thing he had to focus on was his job,
Yes.
because his wife was taking care of the move, the setup, the kids, everything else. He just had to show up to his job.
Mm.
And I just was like, huh, that must be an easy way to live.
Wow.
And so the amount of things that happen that are just inherently sexist against women that you don't recognize because it's just part of what's
Mhm.
normal.
Yes.
And so like my husband laughs because he tells me I have God status on Delta because I have flown them a lot and multiple million miles, all that kind of stuff. So I'm on their planes a lot. And so the amount of times I will be standing to board first, that a man will just walk and stand in front of me because she doesn't have status. She's a woman. And I'm just like, huh. And I remember one time I was standing to board and I was in Colombia in Bogota and I was standing there to board and there was this woman like literally next to me. We weren't talking, just next to me. This guy goes and stands in front of us. I look at her, she looks at me and I said, I see you. She's like, oh my God, I see you too. So we are here, right? I'm like, yeah, we are. And the guy's like, oh, and turns around and walks back. But the cuts happen all the time. The amount of times the women get asked to take the notes, the amount of times the women are supposed to remember who's allergic to what, all of that stuff is the mental load that is
Yeah.
sexist work.
Yep.
I'm not saying it's not important work. You don't want to kill your coworker because he can't have peanuts or whatever, but that shouldn't be assumed to be a woman's job.
Right.
And too often, the tasks that are needed to make work flow, to make life flow, it is assumed the women will take them on and handle them.
Mm.
In one place I went to when I got there, they're like, hey, what month do you want? And I'm like, for what? And they're like, oh, no, we have a birthday club and we celebrate all the birthdays. And I said, well, let me see it and I'll figure it out. Because I wanted to see how many men had a month. And so they bring it out, and I'm like, is this just for women? Oh, no, it's for everyone. I said, then why is there not a single man on here? Oh, well, no one volunteered. I'm like, okay. I said, well, we can talk about that. And she's like, well, I can't. And I'm like, oh, but that's fun. I can. So I went into the next meeting and I said, hey, I love this idea of the birthday club. This is amazing. So how are we going to change it up this year? Because it's been all women doing it. So what men want to step up and lead this year?
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And they were like, but but, d and I said, "No, everybody's been participating, which is awesome. So, I mean, guys, you don't have to make the cake, just go and buy one. So who's gonna lead which month?" And one guy actually said, "Well, I don't want to participate then." I'm like, "That's great. That's your choice. No problem. What month is your birthday? Then okay, we'll make sure not to include you." And I just kept going. And he expected me to fight him. Nope, I'm not going to fight you on that. You know what? Peace out, dude. Move on. But then the men were like, "Oh, okay," and they stepped up, and we ended up having like 8 men and 4 women. Fine, but I had 8 men, all 8, who came up afterwards and said, one, they didn't like being called out. I said, really nicely, but I don't care. And two, they said, but it also made me realize that how often things get done that we participate in but don't contribute to. I'm like,
Mm.
yes, that's the learning.
Wow.
So
And
it happens all over.
that's the power you had, and I felt that in the book that you went into these systems and it was almost like you could your radar was up and you're like, "Oh, that doesn't work and that's not quite right." And you modeled for other women raising your hand and saying, "This doesn't
Yeah.
work." So you really are a disruptor, Nicole, and I think you're empowering other women through this taboo topics to be disruptors as well by just acknowledging what's not okay anymore and what isn't the way forward.
Any woman in business, one place where you can be so positively disruptive is in compensation.
Oh,
Go look at any woman who is reporting to you and check their compensation. I have had to fix probably 80% of the women who worked for me. I've had to fix stuff. And so, most companies have annual cycles and different processes that they use and blah, blah, blah. But I would, within the first week, I would always check compensation of everyone on my team. And I found so many inequities, especially if the woman was either of color or LGBTQ or something else, then it was a double whammy. But I would then go in and disrupt and say, we need to do a spot raise. We need to do this. Well, it's not time. I don't care. They're out of band. They're out of this. This has to be fixed. And which, on one hand, I wanted to fix it because it was the right thing. On the other hand, it was a really great way to show my team that they could trust me, that I had their backs. And so it was both of those. But any woman in business for your team, go and look at the compensation of the men versus the women, people of color versus white. Check those vectors out and see, and I guarantee you there's something to be fixed.
yeah, your book where it talks about negotiating your salary, always negotiate your salary
Yes, please.
is a great lesson. I had an experience once where I don't know if I've even told you this, but I'd been working for an organization for many years and we had to hire for a position and I had someone in mind and I reached out and he ended up taking the job and about a year later I was vice president at the time and I looked and he was making more than me.
Wow.
And I was technically over him and
Yeah.
so that it was a hard conversation, but I was like, this is not okay. And it got corrected. But
Yeah.
just the idea that that happened kind of under my nose, I was like, wow, you really do have to pay attention.
Yeah.
And especially if you're moving companies, because if you're within a company for a while, your salary curve flattens. Whereas people who are brought in at a higher point with a higher curve. And so that's another thing to check is versus new hires versus people with lower tenure, what do the salary curves look like and are they the same? Because you are usually unintentionally penalizing people who are loyal and people who
Yes.
are staying there. And there's times where you got to be like, oh no, I got to bring you up to match you with all the other
Right.
people. But that's part of the maintenance. And too often people are just like, well, this year's a 3% raise. Here you go. Blah, blah, blah. And they don't look at everything underneath it. And as a leader, especially as a woman, you've got to do that, especially on your team.
Mm.
It's great advice.
Okay. So, in addition to navigating and asking for the money that you deserve in a job, I actually want to come back to this idea of this younger generation of women.
Mhm.
What what advice, what conversations, what tips? Because at that talk you gave at the business school, there was a handful of college women there listening to you. What are the things where you're standing now with lots of experience and lots of things that have happened to you? What are some of the pieces of advice that you wish you would have known at the tender age of, 22?
Recognize that many of the freedoms that you have exist because women before you fought.
Mm. Amen.
So I was 2 years old when the last law was passed. I'm sorry, 3 years old when the last law was passed guaranteeing financial freedom for women, meaning you could get your own bank accounts without male cosigners, you could get credit without male cosigners. That's happened within my lifetime.
Yeah.
To put it in perspective, the last time we went to the moon, you couldn't do that. This time when we went to the moon, you could. So recognize that the things that you take as evident, obvious, and part of your life are not that old. So understand any right that you have is tenuous and can be taken away if you don't value it and use it. First and foremost. The second thing I would say is it's going to be okay.
Mm.
There is so much spun up about, well, are you married? Are you engaged? Are you this? Are you that? Are you gay? Are you straight? Are you having kids? Are you not? Da, 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 da. Where people put their paradigm of a perfect life plan on you
Mm.
and expect you to follow it. And you might be saying, yeah, I got a college degree, but I really just want to stay home and bake muffins and raise babies. Okay. I mean, that is not my choice, but I celebrate that for you.
Right.
That is great for you. And the reason you have that freedom is because of what the women who did before you. And if you make that choice, make sure you have legal documentation that entitles you to half of what your husband does, whether it's a company, his job, if you agree to do that, guard it legally.
Right.
Don't just assume everything's going to be okay. Do it legally. Have the hard discussions that say, hey, I'm willing to do this, but if something happens in 20 years, I need to be protected.
Yeah.
And if your husband, spouse, partner disagrees with that, then they want slave labor.
Yeah.
So if you're choosing that, great, do it, protect yourself. So it's going to be okay. If you go into corporate America and you screw up a worksheet, it's going to be okay.
Mhm.
It's not the end of your career. It's good learning, huge learning. It's going to be okay. That resilience to respond when things go wrong, live in that. I mean, I remember, I gave this example in my book. I had the first chance to present to a vice president at Procter & Gamble, and that was like rarefied air. That was not people I ever talked with. I was just a couple years in my career. We'd done this whole big project. We were taking it to him to get approval, get funding, all this stuff. We got all of that, and all I could sit there and think about was, oh my God, there was a typo in the deck.
I remember that.
Months of work, got approval. He was fine with it, but all I could focus on was the typo. For the love of all things holy, no, it's going to be okay.
Yeah.
So that would be the second one. The third one is you only have you. That means your energy, your time. Start as you intend to go. If you start staying at the office every night, working every weekend, being on call 24/7, that is no longer extra. That is expected. And if you try to pull back, oh, they're not doing their job anymore.
Mm.
Whereas the dude who shows up from 8 to 5 and leave, that's all that's expected of him. So if he does answer the call later, oh, he's such a good dude. Whereas you are expected to do it because that's what you've been doing. So guard your lunches,
Mm.
guard the end of the day. You should be fed. I highly support it at work. You need to create time for you. And so the amount of time someone says, oh, but you're so much better at the PowerPoint. Thank you. I really appreciate that. So why don't you give it a try and I can give you feedback so you can learn too. Just because someone is nice to you, you don't have to take on their work, mental or physical. Only one you. Guard your time preciously. So I guess those would probably be the three. Respect the ones before you, guard your time, and then just be true and know it'll be okay.
It's going to be okay. I love
Mm,
that message. It's going to be okay.
I do too.
Yeah.
And make it
Well,
legal no matter what you do.
that's right.
That's also
As a former lawyer, make it legal. Okay, so this has been a incredible conversation. Even though we both read the book, I feel like I even got more from this conversation. And it's good to flesh these issues out too. I actually think the book is great for mothers and daughters.
Yeah.
I plan to talk about this with my daughter. I think that's how the generations like us, who lived during a time where women didn't have all the financial freedoms and
Mhm.
even bodily autonomy, how we can talk through how important and valuable women's rights are, because we are entering where the younger generation doesn't remember. So
Right.
having those intergenerational conversations seem really important right now.
Absolutely. And it's our mothers never talked to us about money largely because they couldn't. They didn't have the capacity because it wasn't legal for them. And so we were left hanging and learning a lot of things the hard way. Whereas now, though, with Gen X, millennials, they should be talking to their children differently about money, especially the girls. And that is new. And that might sound crazy to people listening to it, but that wasn't possible 40 years ago.
Yeah.
And so now that is possible. And we've got to lean into that.
Yeah.
yeah, exactly.
Well, we always like to end every conversation with a question.
Mm,
And, this podcast is based off of the book Women Who Run with the Wolves by Clarissa Pinkola Estes. And you are definitely the wild woman archetype is very
We
present
can
in
see
you.
it in you,
We
Nicole.
can. I love it. And so we like to ask, she says there's 4 doors that are doors into the life of the wild woman. So which one of these doors, or maybe more than one, really resonate with you? If you have a deep scar, that is a door. If you have an old story, that is a door. If you love the sky and the water so much you can almost not bear it, that is a door. And if you yearn for a deeper life, a full life, sane life, that is a door. So is there one door that you really feel drawn to?
I think to me it would be the full life door because I perceive that so many women live half lives because they have to live in service of so many other people that they don't get to live their lives fully in a
Mm.
way that they want because they have to take care of the in-laws and the spouses and the partners and the kids and the da 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 da. So they don't get to ever fully say, I want this
Mm,
and I'm going to go do it.
I agree.
Mm. Yeah. And you've done it. You've done it your way. And now you are, sharing your wisdom and very powerful messages with so many women and I want to say we're excited because you will be doing a book club in the
Yes.
here in the Iowa City area with the Wellbeing or Water Bear Collective, which I'm part of. And so can you tell our listeners about that opportunity coming up in late summer?
So, first of all, the Water Bearer Collective is just so freaking cool. I love the fact that it's women getting together and figuring out how to improve our lives with our own input. I just think that's phenomenal. And so we're doing the first book club with the Water Bearers, and so it's a virtual book club, and it's going to be on August 4th and September 1st. And so the Water Bearers are going to be sending out information on this. We hope next week, and you will be able to register for it, and you will have it'll be Zoom because who knows where folks are. And we're going to be getting on and talking about the topics in the book. And so my book is divided into 3 sections, a P section, an M section, and an S section. PMS,
Which
yes,
we
it
loved.
is all the way through my book. And so we're going to talk about the P section in the first book club because that's 12 different chapters. And in the second book club, we're going to be talking about the M and S section because that's also 12 chapters. And so then on September 10th, I'm actually going to be at the James Theater, and we're going to give a keynote and then do Q&A and just be there for everyone. And so it's I'm really looking forward to it because, again, I think the water bears are just so cool. And anything that takes me back to Iowa City always makes me happy. And so I think this is just going to be a great group coming together.
Well, we can't wait to
Yeah,
see you
we
back.
will be there. And listeners, if you're in the area, come out and join us for book club and for that live event.
Yeah. And can you share where listeners can find your work?
Absolutely. You can find me in all the usual places. So because my name is too ubiquitous, you got to go through my company name, which is innate, INNATE power.com. So innate-power.com is my website. You can find me on LinkedIn as Nicole M. Johnston and on Coach Nicole Johnston on both Instagram and Facebook. So I'm doing all the stuff. I'm building my YouTube channel. It's not quite there yet, but all the places that you would look for people, you can find me there. Usually in a yellow jacket.
I love that.
Great. My last thing that I want to ask Nicole, what's the name? What's your mom's name? I feel like we have to give an extra snap to your mom.
Yeah.
Because I was so touched by her story, the story or her encouragement to you to raise your hand. And I feel like if every young girl were told that, we would be living in a different world. So can we just honor your mom for a minute?
That would be the fabulous Carol Johnston.
Yay, Carol.
Carol Johnston.
Thank
Snap
you, Carol.
you.
Snaps to Carol. All right. Thank you so much, Nicole, for this
Yes.
lovely conversation. And we're excited to reconnect with you when you're back in Iowa City.
Oh, thank you so much.
Thanks for joining us today. If you like this podcast, please subscribe, rate, and review. Come back and rewild with us again next week.